The Claim Pie Empire actor Jussie Smollett, as you see here, that the victim of a bias attack was quickly met with widespread media coverage. And next to Smollett, this alleged crime, an attack on a Jewish man in Brooklyn, New York, occurring within 24 hours. Hate crime was captured on surveillance video with minimal coverage. But why the discrepancy? Joining me with that take and the impact the Smollett case is having on politics is Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com. He's also a syndicated columnist, host of The Ben Shapiro Show, author of the upcoming book. I mean, we could go on, but we want to get your take on this, Ben, because you wrote about this yesterday, and it was pretty stark when you look at the differences.
Absolutely. I mean, one of these assaults was caught on tape. The other turns out to have been a complete hoax. The amount of attention paid to the assault on the Jewish man in New York was nil. I mean, the media legitimately did not cover it. The amount of attention on Jussie Smollett, of course, was enormous, and that's because there was a narrative to be promoted. Jonathan Capehart of the Washington Post nearly admitted this on MSNBC. He essentially said that a lot of people bought into the Jussie Smollett narrative, which is that Trump supporters are stalking black people all around America, seeking to beat them, seeking to harass them, and this was a perfect story. Now, when a story is too perfect to be true, it usually is, and this was one of those cases. But the real question is why hate crimes in New York, which have been up dramatically this year, largely targeting Jews in New York City, have not been covered.
Yeah, we have some numbers on that, if I could just show. In New York, in 2018, you see steady attacks at 186 last year. And then, you know, that's not just New York, Ben, as you know, across the nation, 938 in 2017 alone. I mean, that seems to me like that's a national emergency.
Well, I mean, certainly, if you're going to look at the groups most targeted in hate crimes across the United States on a per capita basis, Jews are twice as likely to be targeted as African Americans. They are twice as likely to be targeted as gay Americans. The idea that the real threat when it comes to hate crimes is largely directed against blacks or against gay folks in the United States. Listen, every hate crime is obviously awful and evil, but it's amazing that the media ignore one form of hate crime. And the reason is the New York Times admitted this. They said, yeah, we've had a spate of hate crimes against Jews in New York City. We don't cover it because it doesn't fit our ideological narrative. The people who are doing these assaults are not white supremacists. They are not one of the hate crimes in New York City has been linked to white supremacy. And so we basically just ignore it because it doesn't fit the narrative that we want to tell. And beyond that, the idea of Jews as victims in the United States is on its face baldly absurd because Jews are such disproportionate winners in the American system. I mean, Jews are disproportionately well-educated, disproportionately wealthy. And so if we were to look at hate crimes and say, okay, well, we're going to judge by hate crimes which groups are most victimized, then it doesn't make any sense because Jews are not actually supremely victimized in the United States. So in order to maintain the idea that America is a racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobic place, what you actually have to do is ignore hate crimes against the group most likely to be targeted and instead focus on hate crimes against groups less likely to be targeted in order to maintain the narrative.
How does this play in 2020? I want to take you to a tweet from Kamala Harris. She's the senator from the state where you are from, California. She's a 2020 candidate. On January 29th, she tweeted, "This was an attempted modern-day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because of their sexuality or color of their skin. We must confront this hate." Yesterday, she was asked this. Watch this.
I think that the facts are still unfolding, and I'm very concerned about, obviously, the initial allegation that he made about what might have happened, and it's something we should all take seriously whenever anyone alleges that kind of behavior, but there should be an investigation, and I think that once the investigation is concluded, then we can all comment.
It's interesting to me, Ben, because she is a former prosecutor, and she was there in California, and she surely came across cases like this where you had to have a little bit of skepticism while also having some care and compassion for the victim that is claiming they've been attacked.
Absolutely. And I do love the idea that the facts are now unfolding. So when this first broke, and there were serious questions to be asked about the account, which was on its face rather absurd, and she was immediately jumping to this is a modern-day lynching. Now, the day that it all falls apart, suddenly we have to wait for the facts to unfold. Well, that tells you the narrative that Kamala Harris and so many on the left want to promote, which is that the Jussie Smollett story is happening, the actual story is happening all over the United States. Cory Booker said something very similar. And so if this thing falls apart, then we just sort of pretend that it never was an issue in the first place, and then we look for other instances to prove that America is a really terrible place and that Trump supporters are really, really awful people. I do love Kamala Harris basically running away from her own tweet there. I mean, it's very funny when she's asked by a reporter not to don a rainbow sequin jacket, but to actually...
Like, everyone should be in charge of their own tweets. That's my general rule. And advice free of charge here today. All right, Ben Shapiro, thank you.